The internet's favorite detective opens up about his faith. Who am I talking about? Of course, I'm talking about Coffeezilla, who for a long time has had follower of Jesus in his Twitter bio. So he's been unapologetic about identifying with Jesus, which I appreciate, but I've never heard him go this deep about his faith, what it means to him. I'm not sure why. Maybe he doesn't feel like it's a part of the type of content he makes. Maybe he is unsure of aspects of his faith. But nevertheless, this was by far extremely refreshing to see him dive deep, not just about faith, but specifically about death and his views of heaven and holding on to the Christian position that he ascribes to, while at the same time being open-minded in ways regarding this specific conversation. All right, so we're going to jump right into it. This is from the Drip channel.
Come to peace with it and you die. But
no, but you'll suffer more for not being at peace with it.
Yeah.
It just creates more suffering. It's almost like you can become aware of it and incorporate it as part of the beauty of life. Whereas right now in America, I keep saying America, it's just our instinct, I guess, that death is bad and life is good. And we have to start thinking of it as two sides of the same coin. It's like we have a limited amount of time. That's what makes it good.
So Amish is talking about how we have to come with the grips of death ultimately being inevitable, and that death is a natural part of life, and that you should be okay with death. And Coffeezilla here calls cap. He calls cap on it, okay? But rightfully so. But listen to what he goes on to say. It's actually pretty profound.
yeah,
It's not good if it goes forever.
I was about to cope.
So at some point, someone has
Cope.
to die. Like,
Copium.
you have to die.
Cope.
What are you going to be one of these live forever people?
No, I'm not going to, because I don't think you. I think it's foolish. I think you're chasing the holy grail, just a wild goose chase. But I also think it's a cope to be like, oh yeah, what do I want? Live forever? No, I love the idea of death. No, that's a cope.
It's not a cope. It's like you're submitting to it. You're basically saying there's no way out of it. So,
But that.
By the way, I don't know who did like the random cutaway to this frame was super interesting, but their whole setup is interesting because it's all green screen and they're in different parts of the country, but it says as if they're on this little set together with the music playing in the background, a fireplace. Kind of a vibe.
That's the definition of a coping strategy. So if somebody dies in your life, you realize they're just dead. I'm going to live with it. So you go, okay, I guess I have to accept that's a part of life and they had a good life. That is a cope, but it doesn't mean it's bad to cope. I'm just saying that if your point is what makes life beautiful is that you die, I disagree. I think what makes life beautiful is life. And I think what makes death sad is death, that life ceases, because life is not good for everyone. But as a whole, there are super beautiful parts of life, right? There are sad parts, but life is a beautiful thing. And for me, I think coping was just realizing the inevitability of death and coming to grips with that in my own way. I think for me, it's partly a religious thing. So I don't know. I don't know if people want to hear about that, but
no, tell us.
So it's interesting. He says, I don't know if people want to hear about that. Coffeezilla, we'd love to hear you talk about your faith more. I find it extremely intriguing. I would love to hear how it's connected to how you, does your faith drive the type of content you make in terms of kind of some of this internet detective stuff? I think it's very interesting. But specifically what I think he's getting at here, and I don't want to speak too much for him, but what I think he's getting at here is that death is a sign that everything isn't the way it's intended to be. Because in the Christian worldview, death was not something a part of the design initially, right? That we were meant to live with God in the garden inevitably. And that's a beautiful thing. And then there will be a new heaven and a new earth in the afterlife, right? That'll be physical, not just spiritual, not just floating in the clouds with diapers on like babies or whatever weird thing that we've seen about the afterlife, that it will be a physical thing. And so I think what he's getting at is that death is unnatural. And every time we remember the sting of death, it should remind us that it wasn't intended to be this way. And that is why we grieve, right? Because it wasn't intended for us to experience this, all right? So I appreciate him saying that, because I think instead of saying, oh, we just got to come to grips with death and it is what it is, it just, kind of like a nihilistic Zen perspective. No. We weren't designed to experience that. This is a part of the fall. This is a part of the world not being correct, not being aligned correctly. And so I appreciate this. And shout out to Max in the chat. He says, even Jesus wept when Lazarus died, right? Like Jesus wept because his friend died, because he experienced human emotion.
I'm public about it. I'm a Christian. But so I think coming more to grips, to root with my faith, I think helped with my fear of death. I think it would have been, I'm very grateful that I have that. That I was...
You think you'll live? You're gonna go to heaven and you live forever?
I think
A lot of Christians have a belief in the logos, and that is more, there's like a man in the God philosophy, and then there's this logos that Christians believe in. In Judaism, they call it Ein Sof. It's like this loving energy, and you go back into that.
all I was going to say is I just don't know about there's a very Americanized idea of heaven, which I don't know if it sounds like a Make-A-Wish thing. It's just like you go on a golden streets or whatever. Like, I don't know if I don't think that's actually, I think if there's an afterlife, which I guess I believe there is, I don't think it's going to be our human conception of what, like, I think we just have a human thing of, yeah, my life's gonna be sick, and I'm gonna go drink with the boys, and I'm gonna be playing like poker in heaven, and I don't think that, whatever it is, I don't think it's gonna be that.
He's opening up about his Christian faith, but you can tell he's hesitant to talk about it. But what he goes on to say is that, hey, I think ultimately our description of heaven, and he's just using it in a very, I don't know, worldly perception of it, right? I'm gonna go drink with the boys, I'm gonna go do my thing, is not a accurate representation of what it is. Right now, there's a resource that I want you guys to check. It's a book written by Randy Alcorn, and it's called Heaven. It's actually a really, really, really good book. And the beautiful part about this book is that he explores heaven from the perspective of that it's not something that is just abstract in a spiritual dimension. That heaven in the life to come and in the reign of Christ, there will be a new heaven and a new earth. Right? And that it's not just going to be in another dimension, spiritual sense, that it would also be material and physical. Okay, so check out this quote from Randy Alcorn. The best of life on earth is a glimpse of heaven. The worst of life is a glimpse of hell. For Christians, this present life is the closest they will come to hell. For unbelievers, it is the closest they will come to heaven. For unbelievers, this life on earth is the closest that they will come to heaven. And for believers, this is the closest we'll come to hell. And I remember my buddy Kirk Kennedy did a video recently about this, and he said he was wondering why the wicked have wealth in this life and why people who do evil things still prosper. And he said as he was praying about it, God, in a way, showed him that this is the best it'll ever get for them. That people who are not walking with Jesus and are prospering, that God allows that, and ultimately that's the best it'll be for them, right? Like this life will be the best it'll be for them, which kind of reminds me of this quote. The best of life on earth is a glimpse of heaven. The worst of life is a glimpse of hell. For Christians, this present life is the closest they will come to hell. For unbelievers, it is the closest they will come to heaven. Nothing is more often misdiagnosed than our homesickness for heaven. We think that what we want is sex, alcohol, and a new job, a raise, a doctorate, a spouse, a large screen television, a new car, a cabin in the woods, a condo in Hawaii. What we really want is the person we were made for, Jesus, and the place we were made for, heaven. Nothing less can satisfy. That's good.
It is like a sense of I'll be a millionaire. Like even if I don't make it to being a millionaire here, then heaven will be like I'm a millionaire. So
Yeah, I think people just fill it for. If my life sucked here, I'm just gonna be like, I'm gonna be a super billionaire and I'm gonna be super powerful. And
so that's interesting. So
I don't know. I'm just very.
It's interesting. Most people don't think about that. I find with that whole conception of is God one person in the sky or this kind of energy thing that a lot of religions believe in. I feel like I believe in that. And
so here they start talking about God and the logos and the energy, which is really interesting because he's ascribing to a lot of meditative practices and a lot of Eastern religion, whereas in the Christian tradition, we believe that God is triune, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. But if you listen to the language of like the Eastern Orthodox tradition, they start describing the Spirit of God as like the energies of God, as the omnipresence of God, that in Genesis 1, God is hovering over the waters, right? The Spirit of God is hovering over the waters. And so you see the Godhead there. But sometimes in the Eastern tradition of, I don't want to say appropriating that idea, the energies of God, right? Because I would say when you hear Jonathan Pageau, he still colors within the lines of traditional Christian belief where they start, the universe is one and God is one and the energy is one and we are God. And it's like, whoa, slow your roll, right? And then heaven, what is heaven, right? So let me see. I think there's one more part here that Coffeezilla gets into.
when you talk to people about it, they end up in a gray area that's somewhere in between, not necessarily like a clear view of, no, it's a man in the sky. It's usually people are like, no, it's not a man in the sky. It's more, yeah, it's like a loving energy, or there's that
It's more than just a loving energy, my brother.
kind of feeling of it. And then, so the idea that you would be given a bunch of stuff and like 76 virgins or whatever, it doesn't really make sense, because it's like
76 virgins. Whoa!
you're going to something beyond that. It's not going to be like, oh, you get to be a millionaire now.
Yeah.
Isn't the conclusion of, I don't want to go down that route, but isn't the conclusion of heaven being X amount of virgins kind of reveals the perversion of said religion in question? Anyway.
I don't think consciousness ends after life.
Okay.
But yeah, I just don't know what the shape of it looks like afterwards. But yeah, I have some kind of Christian conception of it. I don't know. I feel like I'm coming more around. I'm just doing like an inward search in that way.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough to talk about online because we live in like a prove it, bro. Hey, you think there's a ball of energy in the sky? Prove it, bro. It's all right.
He's reluctant to talk about it, and it sounds like he's reluctant to talk about it because people are going to drive back to the concept of, show me the evidence for heaven, bro. And that's why he's reluctant? Or is he re-exploring and reimagining these ideas? Again, I don't know anything about Coffeezilla's faith journey. I've reached out to him before, never heard back, but I would love to hear Coffeezilla talk more about this.
I'm not here to convince anybody, but I also think life is too strange.
What is with these cuts?
And too serendipitous for me
Yeah.
to think that happenstance is not also crazy.
That's
So
right.
I think all the ideas, everybody's like explanation for, oh yeah, it just was this. I think everyone's idea is like wild. And I think you just have to go, okay, which wild story am I subscribing to?
You pick whatever you want. No, and I do think we don't talk about it enough here. Like it is very like, especially Christianity. I find that if I say anything good about Jesus, a lot of my white friends will be like, come on, what are you getting into that? The liberal. The liberal doesn't love God anymore. So they'll be like, what are you getting into that stuff? And it's good, man. It's the same as Buddhist. It's very similar. A lot of Christ consciousness teachings, Gospel of Thomas, even these Rosicrucians.
And then if it just falls off there, he gets into Christ consciousness and the Gospel of Thomas, which you just had a whole thing about scholars in the Gospel of Thomas. But other than that, I thought that was a really good conversation. I would hope that Coffeezilla opens up more about this because I don't know, I'm curious. I enjoy his content and I'm curious where his content flows from and what connection his faith has to that, because I think it's interesting. But yeah, I appreciated him talking about that. There's a couple of distinctions that he made, that he does not believe. He believes consciousness goes on. He believes that ultimately whatever you're anchoring yourself in, it still requires some degree of faith and still requires some degree of allowing for a miracle, and that you just have to decide which miracle is the most sensible. And in my opinion, I think Jesus, and I think the biblical narrative and the biblical story, to me, is the most sensible. It's more sensible than all the other theories, whether that's everything is random or that the universe is God or that we're God and one with the universe. I think the Jesus biblical narrative by far is the most solid because of the resurrection story and because of the precedent that's set throughout history, and because I believe the New Testament is reliable. Therefore, I believe the Old Testament is reliable. That's how I came to those conclusions. So those are my thoughts on that.